how's your day been? I head-butted a goat today. Can you top that?
You what, sorry?
I head-butted a goat.
Oh, no.
You got nothing? Yeah, no, I wasn't expecting to do it either, but it was fun. It was only a
Good
baby
time.
goat, but still,
Oh, that's all right, man.
I
Yeah,
fucked him up.
God, there we go. Fucking hell.
Well, I was just going in for a nuzzle, and he leaned his horns down. And he started pushing against me, and I'm like, "All right, this is what we're doing, is it?" It was awesome.
Yeah.
I
So it was
thoroughly recommend it.
more of a sort of like a power play push rather than the fucking.
Yeah, we weren't
Yeah,
getting a run up or anything. But,
yeah, thank God.
nevertheless, I don't think I would have survived that one.
Yeah, would have been awesome.
Mate, the artwork for Sins of the Father is fucking hectic.
Thank
What went into it?
What went into it?
Yeah, so it was photography, right? That wasn't a painting.
Yeah, it's done with photography. So that's my daughter on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't normally look like that. Yeah, so it was a well, I mean, as we did with the cover of Never Enough Snuff, which was our first album in 20 years after the break. I wanted to do something different. I mean, death metal, as you know, like 99% of covers is all done with artwork, and I wanted to explore photography. Never Enough Snuff was the first song that I wrote back from the break, and when that happened, I thought, well, if this ever turns into an album, that's going to be the cover, and I want to recreate a snuff movie. So once you've created a snuff movie, where to from there? we went down to a place called Scarecrow Studios to see a guy called Larry, and Larry does a lot of special effects for television and films and stuff. He did like a lot of stuff for Furiosa. I think he's done Gallipoli, did a bunch of different things. So I rock up down there and it was just like heaven. There's like corpses and limbs and burnt bodies and babies and fucking this, that, and whatever else too, which was like awesome in my books because that's my thing. And yeah, and then I found the severed head was one that we found, and then the prosthetic that's on the torso of my dear friend Martin. That's the one I really fell in love with, and I thought, well, how can I utilize this? So and then I sat down with the makeup artist Lee and the chief photographer Pauline, and we came up with the idea of like, well, what can we have and what can we do here? And then the idea came up of like using a priest, and in a strange sort of twist, that like the cover was actually done before I wrote the song Sins of the Father. We came up with that concept, and I thought, fuck, I've got to write a song about it now. And I was just like, yeah, I know exactly how that's going to roll. So yeah, that came out, and then Sal, who did who's done all of the artwork for for all our albums actually. She did all the graphic design work for Snuff, Dead Speak, and for the self-titled. That was all her right from the start. She's back on board again to do all the artwork for this. Wait till you see the inside; it's just like fucking nuts. So yeah, she's spent like 100 hours in putting it together. It's incredible. So yeah. But yeah, that's being massively into horror and everything else too, and having the opportunity to be art director for your own album covers, just like fucking happy day.
Happy days.
Happy fucking days.
I first heard of your cheers. I first heard of ABRAMELIN. It was in an interview I did with Jason Fuller about Goat Sound. We were talking about the early days of metal and how hard it was for for bands to get taken seriously. Like you guys, you couldn't get a metal band on a big day out and all that kind of stuff. It was rough in the 90s. What do you most remember of how would you describe the Australian scene for you guys when you first started?
Very healthy, and very friendly, and in most instances, it was like just one big happy family. Like it was so good. Yeah, we back then in the day, like, yeah, we used to do everything together. You know, if we weren't going to gigs together, we'd just like go to the pub together and hang out together. And it was like, yeah, and you would mix and match that with it. Like, I had a lot of different friends in a lot of different bands, and that was pretty much how it rolled. We all got along really, really well. Love doing shows together and mixing and matching bands. I also had a thing for a while too where I like to really mix and match genres that fit, you know, within reason. Like, you know, play with a hardcore band or a more like full-on punk band or a cross band or you know, just something else to sort of like, you know, cross-pollinate the scenes of things that were like relatively close, so we could you know, get a little bit more exposure and try and, you know, broaden our horizons. I mean, this is all like, you know, pre-internet when we used to do all of our gig flyers with just A4 photocopies and stick them around in record stores and put them on poles around places. I mean, you know, unless you had enough money to afford a bigger show, would probably go to someone like Rock Posters and get some like, you know, street postering done. But yeah, usually it was all just these tiny little A4s, and word of mouth was like so good. So yeah, people are always like, "What did you do before the internet?" I know my kids do, and I tell them the stories of how we would like relay information and whatever. It's like send a raven, or smoke signal. But no, it was all just like really, really basic, you know, marketing and promotion. And we used to do that on an international level too, like right back in the day, in the late '80s, early '90s, when in my days of like audio tape trading metal and also VHS tape trading underground horror as well. Like everything was done with like flyers. Like, so we've got like, say, a new demo or 7-inch or something coming out, then I would send that across to my mate in Japan and I'd shove it full of like flyers from all of the, you know, other local bands that were playing at the time, and some stickers and shit like that. And then when he's got packages going out to people, he would throw a flyer into each of those, and then they would throw a flyer and so on and so forth. And that was how our organic marketing basically worked. And it worked because you'd have people writing to you from all over the world. Everyone was honest. Everyone had sent cash in the mail. No one ripped each other off. You get one or two here and there, but it was so fucking rare. It was yeah, even on an international level, yeah, there was like so much trust and everything. So yeah. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer, but
No, it's
that was how it was.
it is bizarre that you mentioned trust. I'm an '85 baby. I was 10 years old in '95, so I grew up with a lot of, you know, Fear Factory and all that kind of, you know, Korn and all that kind of great stuff. I was kind of a child of new metal and discovered more extreme stuff later in life. But Some Bright Spark had scanned in a bunch of Hyper magazines. Now that was a computer game magazine that I used to read when I was a kid. And, you know, so these were issues from like 93, 94. You know, you get to see them review Doom for the first time and they're like, "Ah." But what blows my mind is that there were pen pals in the back of it. And there would literally be a list of this thing. It's like, hi, I'm Candice. I am 10 years old and I like this and this and this and this. And yeah, it's basically, here's a list of my interests and here's my home address. And I'm like, fuck.
We had that shit all the time. I had like, and I can't remember certain names now, but I had a guy come over from Japan and stay with me who was like a metal pen pal. I had another guy come over from Europe and stay with me for a couple of days. He was a guy who both of them I used to trade with like on a regular basis, and it was like, hey, I'm coming to Australia. I'm like, fucking come and stay with me.
Yeah.
You'll have to watch horror and smash bongs and talk shit and whatever, but it was all, you know. Australia.
Australian hospitality.
Yeah, I know.
Who do you see as in the scene when it was coming up, you know, in the '80s and '90s? Who do you see as some of the most important metal bands in Australia's history and why? I think I can probably guess a couple.
Definitely ourselves, of course. Yeah, I mean, who were some of the great bands we used to play with back in the day? There were so many. Shows with the guys from Necrotomy, who were always lots of fun. Alchemist, definitely. Armored Angel, Damaged, Misery, Bloodduster. In Extremis from Adelaide. Who else from back in the day? Christbait. Disembowelment. I don't know. I can't really think of it anymore at the moment. But that was like a lot of the bands who we were like doing shows with and hanging out with and were friends and so on.
It's crazy, Matt, the amount of people when they talk about bands that they wish would come back. I swear at the top of almost everyone's list is Damaged. Like if they did a reunion, are they all still alive? Are they able to reunite?
As far as I know, yeah, they're all still kicking, and as far as I know, they would probably all drink a glass of poison mixed with razor blade and anything else unsavory rather than get that band back together again.
Yeah,
I liked all the guys individually, but them together, as in they just I don't think they get along very well at all.
not happening.
My understanding, no, at all. So it'd be just elbows and fucking whatever. I honestly can't ever see it happen. You know, maybe for the right amount of money, maybe, but I wouldn't think so. No.
Fair. Now, mate, I understand that so for a bit of context, I grew up in Tassie, home of the mighty Psychroptic and amongst others.
We've got two of those now.
Mate, I understand that your first EP received a bit of problems with the censors, and it reminded me a bit of what I remember reading about with Intense Hammer Rage, the Tasmanian grindcore band. I think they had like their house got raided and their computers got seized back in the day because of some pretty intense lyrical subject matter.
Really?
Yeah. Your EP, was I reading right that your EP got like
the self-titled album?
I'll need you to lean a bit closer, mate. You keep cutting out.
Yeah, no worries. It was the self-titled album is the one that we got into trouble with. It was around I was working at Shock at the time. And we'd released it, and it had been out for it was out for a while. It was out like maybe for a year or so. And there was a lot of problem with the Australian censors at that time. Decided to pick on a bunch of horror movies and a bunch of metal albums. And I know because it was a lot of the metal albums that I was working on at the time. There was I can't remember what they were. Pungent Stench being called Buttering. There was a Dismember album, the first couple of Cannibal Corpse albums. What else was in the mix? There was one or two other things, but on a domestic scale, it was just us. So, we had to re-release the self-titled album, which we did with the EP, with the first EP, but without lyrics. So, that was essentially all we had to do. We were allowed to release it again because it was like my argument was, well, no one can really understand what I'm saying anyway. So if you guys can understand what I'm saying, then fair enough, pull the record. But that will that's pretty much what happened there. But we were I thought we were the only Aussie band that were targeted as far as I knew, but as far as I knew, because I was only working at Shock and it was only to do with the album that I was dealing with at the time, which was a lot of different labels. So it was a big fucking the ass.
So were you annoyed or encouraged at that with that, or how did you feel about
it? Something between the two. I mean, I liked it because it was like any publicity is good publicity, which was good. But I was annoyed from the point of view that I spent a lot of time writing my lyrics, and I want people to be able to read them. And at that time, with once again, with no internet or anything else like that, it was like, man, if it's not printed inside the album, you ain't going to see it anywhere else. So, that was annoyed from that perspective. But it's like now, it just doesn't seem to. doesn't seem to matter anymore. You can fucking get away with anything. The stuff that I read, like I pretty much read, like I'd say exclusively, extreme horror. I have for like, 40 years plus. They're always getting worse and worse and worse. And the stuff that's in books now, like, fuck me, you can get away with anything, it's like so over the top. Whereas if that book came out, oh, that's right. What's it called? American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. Like that, when it came out, had to be like wrapped in plastic and was rated R and whatever else like that. But like now there's books fucking 10 times worse than that,
Yeah.
and you just fucking download them on your Kindle. No worries at all. Off you go.
It's hilarious. I got given that a couple of years ago, and it still came in the shrink wrap, and it was
wow.
Yeah, it's a hell of a book. Have you read it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I read it when it first came out. I do remember skipping through some of the album reviews, though. I was just like, oh. But outside of that, I thought the book was fantastic. I thought the movie was good, but obviously he couldn't do what he did in the book. But it was still pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the few books that I have reread multiple times, and I seem to get something new out of it every single time. That's blessing.
Yeah, I've got a handful of books that I've read a couple of times. It's amazing, isn't it? Like, there's my CD and DVD collection behind me, and this has been sort of whittled down over the years, but there's movies like I've seen more than 100 times, and I'm very happy to watch movies again and again and again, even like, some new release things that have come out, not that long ago. Something like from even earlier this year, like Late Night with the Devil, I think I've seen like 4 or 5 times already. Or other
loved it. Yeah.
Recent horrors I've already seen, like Hereditary. I've probably seen about 8 or 9 times. Which I watched again recently.
No spoilers. That's on my list.
I never do spoilers. I'm really particular about that. Don't worry.
Good man.
But with books, it's like it's not you don't feel really drawn to read a book 50 times or. Unless you're like got an absolute obsession with it. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
You were talking about when they were going after horror movies. Are we thinking like was it The Usual Suspects, like Salo and stuff like that, or?
No, Salo had its own problems right from the start. Apart from when it was initially released, and then it had a bit of a crack at cinema.
Need you to sit forward a bit.
Yeah, sorry, man. Sorry.
That's all good.
No, Salo was its own thing. I mean, I worked after working in music. I worked in DVD for a long time too, and got to license one of my favorite horror films. And it was funny, some of the things. I mean, some things got rejected on, reasonable merit. I mean, we had issues with like Itchy the Killer. We just managed to get through, but we sneakily put through the uncut version. But then we had other things, like we were releasing the films of Herschel Gordon Lewis, and then it was he did like Blood Feast and stuff like that. And it was one movie, I can't remember what it was, and it was like such a crap low budget film, and they're like, oh, this scene's got excessive violence towards women. I'm like, you've got to be joking. Like, it's like tomato sauce and like a meat tenderizer, and he's whacking her on the bum with like little bits of meat stuck to it. It looks so bad, and they'll pick up on something like that, but then like a movie like Martyrs gets through, and it's just like, what? I don't know. I don't try and get into the mind of the censorship board. It's just fucking weird. No, it would have been more around things that were released at the time. So if Self-Titled came out in 95, 96, then it would have been movies around then, unless they'd gone back and targeted some old stuff. So I can't remember exactly what it was, but I know there was a bunch of things at the time. And if you lived in Queensland, you were just fucked right off the bat. That was like a marketing ploy for us down here in Victoria. Banned in Queensland. It's like, oh, it must be good. And then you watch it and go, it's all right. Just everything got in Queensland. Poor bastards.
It is weird, isn't it, when you watch something that was, some decades after the fact, and you were like, this was controversial? Like,
yeah, I know. Yeah, it's, I don't know. I think it's, Yeah, just the way that it rolls. I mean, I go back and look at films that were like classics for me at the time. I remember like not that long ago, oh, Christ, I'd say within the last, with my son who's 15 now, I'd say when he was maybe 12 or 13, we watched the first Evil Dead, and he was pretty much just laughing the whole way through it, how bad the special effects were and how whatever else to it. I'm just like cringing, going, "Oh my God!" I have honestly seen this movie more than 100 times, and it was just like when it came out, it was just like, "Wow!" And you watch it now, and it's just like, "Oh dear." It doesn't look good, you know. Some films have held up really, really well, you know, like it's, you know, big budget classics and things, you know, your Findings and Romans and things like that. Like they're fucking timeless, no worries at all. But things that relied on special effects at the time, of the time, I should say, sorry, not so good.
Yeah.
Sadly, you know, there's still a special place in my heart for a lot of those films, and I still watch them again anyway. And just I've got my, you know, rose-colored glasses on, so that sort of polishes it up a bit. But Blu-ray also too hasn't been very kind to some of those old movies. When you're
Yeah.
used to watching a grainy old VHS version, it's like wow, and then you watch it really crispy, and you're like,
Well, it's like yeah, my favorite film of all time is Terminator 2.
mm,
And it still to this day looks amazing. Like aside from a
mm,
few dated haircuts, it looks like it was shot 5 years ago, with
yeah,
one exception. It is this visually groundbreaking movie, but for some reason, in the car scene when they've just escaped from the hospital,
mm,
and he's like, "What's wrong with your eyes?" It is the most god awful but ugly rear projection you have ever
yeah.
seen behind this car. And the first time I saw it on VH on DVD, I was like, "What?"
I must say I've never noticed that before, but now the next time I watch it, I will. Speaking of such things, though, and this is the part that made us laugh in Evil Dead because we were watching it on Blu-ray. You've seen Evil Dead before?
The original, not for
Yeah, the
many years.
original.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, not for many years. Okay. If and when you watch it again, there's always a scene where they're showing the outside of the cabin. There's the outside of the cabin, and there's like a full moon, and then like dark smoke blows
Oh
across the
god,
moon.
what crew members
This
there?
this happens. This happens regularly throughout the film. They do an outside shot, ooh, and then it goes back in, and whatever's going on. We watched it on Blu-ray, and and it's so fucking obvious. You've got the cabin, and then it's just like a screen, and they're projecting the moon onto the screen, and it's really obvious on Blu-ray. I was just like, oh no. So of course, every time it came on, we just wet ourselves laughing. And all those years of watching it like on VHS and even on DVD, I didn't notice it. Now, like on a high def TV, just makes it pop.
What
Oh,
are
good.
what are some of the best horror movies you've seen in the last few years?
In the last few years, working backwards from now of things I've watched just recently, I really enjoyed Longlegs,
Hmm.
um, which I saw, I don't know, very recently. Late Night with the Devil, as I mentioned
Hmm.
before. Hereditary, definitely. Malignant, Night House. Um, What else? When Evil Lurks, I've fucking loved. I've seen that a bunch of times. Have you seen that one? Spanish film, When Evil
No,
Lurks?
no. When Evil Lurks. Right, it's on the list. Yeah. When
Winner.
Evil.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, it's
All right.
fucking quality demonic possession and just fucking serious and brutal. Yeah, it's fucking
Nice.
ticks all the boxes. Yeah. I really like the First Omen. I thought was a fantastic prequel and
Hmm.
very well handled. It's so and I actually thought it worked well too with uh fuck, I've forgotten the name of it at the moment. The Shining um follow up one.
Doctor Sleep.
Doctor Sleep, yeah, I thought that was handled really well too. With it, something when you're working with the classics like that, it's so easy to fuck it up, like they did with like Exorcist Believer or other things like that. But the yeah, Doctor Sleep and the First Omen, I thought were fantastic. I thought they were both handled really really well. Um, what else? I don't know. I can't think of them. I watch fucking so much horror, it's ridiculous. And I read so much horror, it's ridiculous. I mean, I try and get through probably two, three books a month I'm usually reading a book, and I've got a book on the go on Audible as well, so I can listen to horror when I drive around and then read horror when I'm at home. That's constantly, and I mean, which it also comes in handy when you're looking for, material for writing death metal lyrics. It's it stores a lot of thing in your brain. But honestly, that's just how I roll. That's my downtime.
Can I make a recommendation? I don't know if you've seen this. Inner Violent Nature. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't. I knew when it was coming out, and there was a few things, but I've got a lot of my horror movie friends, peers, had sort of gone, nah, it's nothing you haven't seen before.
Yeah.
And I've seen so many fucking slashes, and it'd have to be something pretty special to capture my attention. And I think, look, at some stage one day when it's like not as a paid for on a streaming channel, and it's just there as a freebie on Shudder or something, which I think it might be now. I might take a peek of it when I'm sitting around and I've got nothing better to do, but it wasn't one that I was like in a hurry to see. But
it doesn't live up to its premise, but it was just really they sold me on the trailer, because it's literally just you are just following this
the dude around in there. Look, it looks okay, and it's like I said, if I haven't got much better to do, I'll go and check it out. But I hadn't heard the best reviews, but you're actually the first person who said check it out, so
fair.
I will have to peek at some point.
The other, which you absolutely need to see in the cinema, is The Substance. Have you seen that yet? Demi Moore, full-blown body horror.
Yeah. I know the one you're talking about. Yeah, I remember seeing the trailer for it. Actually, my daughter got me onto that one. She saw a trailer for it when she went and saw something else recently. She's like, Dad, you got to watch this. And I'm looking at that going, oh, yeah. And then the trailer keeps going. I'm like, oh, yeah. And then by the time at the end of the trailer, I'm like,
yeah. Proper
cool.
Practical effects, just
it's a body horror one, isn't it?
Yes.
Cool. I love body horror. Like, I'm a massive Cronenberg fan. Actually, I watched with my partner who had never seen The Brood from 1979, I think it is. And so we watched that just the other night, literally 3 nights ago. So yeah, body horror is fucking right up there on my list.
I've still got. I'm going through this massive list of movies that I haven't seen, and I don't have. I don't think I've ever actually sat down and watched a David Cronenberg movie. So I've got The Fly. Did he do The Thing, or was that John Carpenter? No, that was Carpenter. Videodrome was Cronenberg. Yeah, so these are all I'm just slowly going to.
So The Fly is a really good place to start because it's probably one of his more bigger budget films, and Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis are fantastic in it. Them two in their prime as well too, they're unreal. So yeah, start with The Fly, and Videodrome with Debbie Harry.
Yeah.
Wow, what a film. That's such a good movie. Right back in the day I used to collect Fangoria magazine, so I'd always read about these movies, and then it was years later till I had an opportunity to see them, and they finally got released on VHS in Australia, and quite often cut, sadly, which is actually something that got me into the whole underground video trading, because I was sick of fucking watching cut version films, so especially early Argento and Fulci films, the Italian horror directors, and a lot of other stuff coming out of the US and Japan as well too. I was just fuck this. So took control of such things and sorted it out myself.
I love interviews like this where, would you believe we were originally talking about a metal band called ABRAMELIN, and we've just spent the last 20 minutes talking about fucking horror movies?
Well, it's part and parcel for me. It's it's my lyrics are all drawn from all of the movies I watch and the books I read and the everything. So that's all spawned from horror. So to sit and talk about horror is just we might as well be talking about death metal lyrics for me, because that's pretty much how I roll. For me, this is doing what I do with the band is an artistic outlet for all the horror I consume. So it's horror in, horror out.
Oh, perfect. You just gave me the perfect title for the YouTube video.
There
ABRAMELIN.
you
All right, love it.
and it's
Awesome.
and then what's left behind is a happy guy.
I
So,
love it. You're just there looking post-coital, all spent. It's like, oh, yes.
yeah, 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 pretty much.
Oh, Simon, this has been rad, man. Thank you very much for your time. It has really been a pleasure talking to you.
Absolute pleasure. And if you want some, shoot us an email if you want some tips on films. Like I'd fucking love talking about horror till the cows come home. So it's if you want like I'll put together a big list for you. If you've been
Please.
80% big shit, but there could be some good gems in there that you haven't.
Yeah, loving it. I've been on a real elevated horror kick lately. I'm just getting out of the army, so I've
Yeah,
spent the last 11 years with barely enough time to scratch myself, and now I've
yeah,
literally spent like almost 3 months on medical leave while I'm transitioning. So I
yeah.
now have time to enjoy movies again, and so
Fantastic.
I have just been going through this massive list of all these films that I've just haven't had time, and I'm fucking loving it. So.
You read?
So not
Not really.
really. Not
That's
really. I
okay.
used to when I was outfield a lot, which is why I get like
Yeah,
maybe like American Psycho, but I just don't.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Because I can recommend a fuck ton of books as well, but I can definitely recommend a shitload of really good films for you. I'll put together a little list and
awesome.
we're now up to this. Why don't we go?
Yeah, man. Fire it through my email. I really appreciate it. All right, man.
No
Have a
worries.
good one, mate.
Will do. Thank you.